The crack of a gavel shattered the hushed tension in the dusty auction house as Zara Jones clutched her trembling hands, watching the last of her family's possessions disappear to the highest bidder. Drought had claimed their crops, debt had claimed their land, and now strangers claimed their legacy piece by weathered piece. The year was 1878, and mercy was as scarce as rainfall in the Texas Panhandle. $5 for the lot, announced the auctioneer, pointing to the final items her mother's china teacup collection, cracked but still beautiful like her own spirit. 10, called a voice from the back. Zara's heart sank. $10. Not even enough to buy passage east to her distant cousins. At 23 years old, with no family, no home, and now no possessions, she was facing the cruel reality of a woman alone in the West. The auctioneer's gavel rose. $10 going once. $50, came a deep voice from the doorway. The crowd parted as a tall figure stepped into the shadowed auction hall. Zara squinted against the harsh sunlight that framed him in silhouette. Lean and broad-shouldered, the stranger's spurs clinked against the wooden floor as he approached. His face emerged from shadow weathered by sun and wind, yet handsome, with eyes the color of a summer storm. "Sold. To Mr. Owen Shaw," the auctioneer declared, looking relieved to end the pitiful proceedings. The crowd dispersed quickly, townsfolk averting their eyes from Zara's humiliation. She stood frozen, watching the stranger, this Owen Shaw, examine her mother's teacups with surprising gentleness. "Why?" she asked, finding her voice at last. He looked up, those gray eyes assessing her with unsettling directness. "These don't belong to me, Miss Jones." He pushed the box toward her. "They belong with you. I can't repay you. I'm not asking for payment." He adjusted his worn Stetson. "The auction's ended, madam, but if you'll permit me to speak plainly, your story doesn't end here. It starts with me." Zara bristled. "Mr. Shaw, if you think purchasing my family's possessions entitles you to, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'm offering you a job, Miss Jones. My ranch needs a housekeeper, room, board, and fair wages. And why would you do that for a stranger?" Owen Shaw's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I knew your father, good man, honorable." He extended a calloused hand. "What do you say? It's honest work." With her prospects vanished like morning dew under the Texas sun, Zara made the decision that would change her life forever. She took his hand. "I accept, Mr. Shaw." The ride to the Shaw Ranch stretched 17 miles beyond the town limits, across rolling plains dotted with mesquite and scrub brush. Owen rode ahead on a magnificent chestnut stallion while Zara followed in a weathered but well-maintained wagon, her few remaining possessions, including her mother's teacups, secured in the back. "Why does a bachelor rancher need a housekeeper?" she called over the rumble of wagon wheels. Owen glanced back, the setting sun casting his features in bronze. "Who said I was a bachelor?" Zara's stomach dropped. Had she just agreed to work for a married man? The thought of facing some rancher's wife explaining her presence. "I'm just funning with you, Miss Jones," Owen said, his expression serious despite his words. "It's just me and the ranch hands. 5 men who can't cook worth a damn and keep the place looking like a tornado hit it." As they crested a small rise, the Shaw Ranch came into view. A sturdy 2-story house stood proudly against the backdrop of golden grassland. Nearby, a large barn, stables, and bunkhouse completed the compound. A stream cut through the property, bordered by cottonwoods that provided rare shade in the harsh landscape. "It's beautiful," Zara whispered. "It's home," Owen replied simply. That evening, Zara met the ranch hands, a motley crew of hard-working men who greeted her with awkward nods and mumbled pleasantries. There was Hank, the elderly foreman with knees that predicted rain better than any barometer. Miguel, whose skill with horses bordered on supernatural. The Donovan brothers, Patrick and Thomas, inseparable and constantly bickering. And young Charlie, barely 19 with dreams bigger than the Texas sky. After a simple meal that the men praised as if it were a royal feast, Owen showed Zara to her quarters, a small but clean room off the kitchen with a narrow bed, washstand, and a window that faced east. "Sun'll wake you early," he warned. "But it's a fine sight watching dawn break over the plains." "Mr. Shaw," Zara began, gathering her courage, "I need to understand your expectations." His brow furrowed. "I expect you to cook, clean, and manage the household, nothing more. And my position here, it's strictly professional." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked almost like hurt. "Miss Jones, I may be a lot of things, but I am not the kind of man who would take advantage of a woman's difficult circumstances. You have my word on that." Shame heated Zara's cheeks. "I apologize for the implication." Owen nodded, his expression unreadable. "Get some rest. Tomorrow comes early." True to his word, the eastern sun woke Zara at first light. She dressed quickly in her simple calico dress and pinned her dark hair into a practical bun. The kitchen was her domain now, and she set to work making a hearty breakfast for hungry men who'd be working from sunup to sundown. The days fell into a rhythm. Zara would rise with the sun, prepare breakfast, clean the house, wash clothes, bake bread, tend to a small kitchen garden she'd started, and prepare dinner. The work was hard but satisfying. For the first time since her parents' deaths, she felt useful. Owen remained an enigma. He worked alongside his men, often returning to the house long after the others had eaten and retired. Sometimes, she would find him on the porch late at night, smoking a cigarette and staring at the stars with an expression she couldn't decipher. A month passed, then two. Summer heat bore down mercilessly on the land, turning grass brittle and creek beds dusty. Zara learned to make do with less water, to cook meals that stretched limited supplies, to mend and reuse until nothing could be salvaged. One evening, as she served dinner to the men, Owen was absent. "Where's Mr. Shaw?" she asked, setting down a plate of beans and cornbread. Hank looked up, his weathered face creased with concern. "Riding fence in the north pasture, should have been back by now." "Storm's brewing," Patrick Donovan added, glancing toward the window where clouds were gathering on the horizon. As if summoned by their words, the door burst open. Owen stumbled in, his shirt torn and bloody, his face pale beneath his tan. "Mr. Shaw." Zara rushed forward as the men jumped to their feet. "Rustlers," Owen managed, grimacing in pain. "Shot me, took 10 head." They helped him to his bedroom, where Zara discovered a bullet had grazed his ribs, leaving a nasty furrow but no serious damage. The men left to pursue the rustlers while she cleaned and bandaged the wound, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "You've done this before," Owen observed, watching her work. "My father was often injured. Life on a failing farm isn't exactly safe." She tied off the bandage. "You should rest." "Can't. Need to go after them, you need to heal," she insisted, pressing him back onto the bed when he tried to rise. "Your men are capable." For a moment he looked ready to argue, then relented with a sigh. "Just for tonight." Zara nodded, relief washing through her. "I'll bring you some broth." When she returned with the broth, she found him examining a faded photograph. He quickly tucked it away, but not before she caught a glimpse of a young woman with a gentle smile. "Your wife?" she asked softly, setting down the tray. Owen's eyes darkened. "She was." "I'm sorry," Zara said, understanding the past tense all too well. "May I ask what happened?" "Childbirth. 4 years ago." His voice was flat, as if the emotion had been scoured away by repeated tellings. "Lost them both." Zara's heart ached for him. "My parents died of influenza last winter." 3 days apart. They sat in shared silence, bound by the common thread of loss. "Does it get easier?" she finally asked. Owen's gaze met hers. "No, but you get stronger." The rustlers were caught the next day, and the stolen cattle recovered. Life at the Shaw Ranch resumed its rhythm, but something had shifted between Zara and Owen. A door had opened not wide, but enough to glimpse what lay beyond. As summer surrendered to fall, Zara found herself watching Owen more closely. The way his hands, rough from work, could be surprisingly gentle with a new calf. How his rare smile transformed his entire face. The quiet respect he commanded from his men without ever raising his voice. She caught him watching her too when he thought she wouldn't notice. At dinner, his eyes would linger on her hands as she served the meal. When she sang softly while hanging laundry, he would pause in his work, listening. One crisp October evening, Zara was gathering eggs from the henhouse when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Expecting Owen or one of the hands, she stepped outside to find 3 unfamiliar men dismounting. "Well, looky here," drawled the tallest, a lanky man with a pockmarked face. "Shaw's got himself a pretty little housekeeper." Something in his tone sent a chill down her spine. "Mr. Shaw is expecting you." "Oh, he's expecting us all right," said another, shorter but broader, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "Ain't that right, Jeb?" The third man, clearly the leader, nodded slowly. His cold eyes assessed the property. "Shaw and I have unfinished business." "He's not here," Zara said, clutching the basket of eggs tighter. "Perhaps you could come back, we'll wait," Jeb decided, pushing past her toward the house. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. The men were clearly trouble, and Owen and the hands were miles away, moving cattle to winter pastures. They wouldn't be back until nightfall. She followed the intruders into the house, mind racing. The men made themselves at home, the tall one propping muddy boots on the clean kitchen table, the broad one rummaging through cupboards. "Got any whiskey, sweetheart?" Jeb asked, settling into Owen's chair. "No," she lied. "Mr. Shaw doesn't drink," Jeb laughed. "That's not the Owen Shaw I remember. Man could outdrink half the Confederate Army." Zara's surprise must have shown on her face. "Oh, he never told you about his war days." Jeb's smile was ugly. "Your boss was quite the soldier until Shiloh." "That's enough," she said firmly. "I must ask you to leave until Mr. Shaw returns." "And if we don't?" The tall man stood, looming over her. Zara's hand moved to her apron pocket where she kept a small knife for kitchen tasks. "Then there will be trouble." A tense silence fell. Then Jeb laughed, a harsh barking sound. "She's got spirit, boys. Leave her be. We're here for Shaw, not to frighten his help." The afternoon crawled by, the men's presence a constant threat. Zara continued her chores, keeping a wary distance but listening to their conversation, gathering information. They were former comrades of Owen's from the war, it seemed, and they believed he had something that belonged to them. As twilight approached, she heard horses in the distance. Relief flooded through her, quickly followed by dread. Owen was riding into danger. She slipped outside, hoping to warn him, but Jeb followed, his hand resting casually on his holstered pistol. "Don't try anything foolish," he warned quietly. Owen saw them from a distance and slowed his approach, instantly alert. He rode alone. The hands must have continued on to the north pasture with the cattle. "Jeb Harker," he called, dismounting carefully. "Thought you were dead. Disappointed?" Jeb grinned without humor. "Surprised," Owen countered, his eyes flicking to Zara. "You all right, Miss Jones?" "I'm fine," she assured him, trying to convey a warning with her eyes. Owen nodded slightly, understanding. "What brings you to my ranch, Jeb?" "You know damn well what. The gold Shaw." Zara saw confusion flash across Owen's face before his expression hardened. "There is no gold, never was. Captain said different before they hanged him." "Captain Wells was a liar and a thief," Owen replied evenly. "Whatever he told you was his final revenge, sending you on a wild goose chase." Jeb's face darkened with anger. "You're lying. You took it. You and Peterson." "Peterson died at Andersonville," Owen said quietly. "And I never saw any gold. Now I'm asking you to leave my property and not return." For a long moment, Jeb stared at Owen, weighing his words. Then his hand moved to his gun. "I don't believe you." What happened next unfolded in heartbeats. Owen lunged forward, tackling Zara to the ground as gunfire erupted. They rolled behind the water trough as bullets splintered wood around them. "Stay down," Owen ordered, drawing his own pistol. "There are 3 of them," Zara gasped. "I noticed." His mouth set in a grim line. "When I give the word, run for the barn." "I'm not leaving you, Zara." It was the first time he'd used her given name. "Please." The raw emotion in his voice silenced her protest. She nodded. Owen fired 3 rapid shots, forcing the men to take cover. "Now," he shouted. Zara ran, heart in her throat, expecting to feel a bullet at any moment. She reached the barn and slipped inside, fumbling in the dimness for the spare rifle she knew Owen kept there. Outside, the gunfight continued. She heard a cry of pain that wasn't Owen's voice, then more shooting. Loading the rifle with shaking hands, she moved to the hayloft window for a better vantage point. What she saw froze her blood. Owen was pinned down behind a failing barricade of stacked firewood. Jeb and the tall man were advancing on his position while the third lay motionless in the dirt. Without hesitation, Zara raised the rifle and fired. Her shot went wide, but it was enough to startle the attackers. Owen seized the opportunity, emerging from cover to fire twice. The tall man fell. Jeb ducked behind the well. "It's over, Jeb," Owen called. "Your men are down. Ride out now and I won't come after you." Silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Then, slowly, Jeb stood, hands raised. "This isn't finished, Shaw." "It is for today," Owen replied, keeping his gun steady. Jeb backed toward his horse, mounted awkwardly, and spurred the animal into a gallop. Owen kept his weapon trained on the retreating figure until he disappeared into the gathering darkness. Only then did he lower his gun and look up at the hayloft window. "You can come down now, Zara." She descended on trembling legs, the rifle still clutched in her hands. Will he come back?" "Not tonight." Owen's face was grim as he checked the fallen men. One was dead, the other barely alive. Zara helped him tend to the wounded man, who died despite their efforts before midnight. They buried both men at dawn behind the barn in unmarked graves. Who were they really? Zara asked as they walked back to the house, exhausted. Owen sighed heavily. "Men I served with during the war, deserters. They followed Captain Wells in a scheme to steal Confederate payroll gold. I refused to participate and reported them, but Wells convinced them I'd taken the gold myself." "And did you?" He stopped, facing her directly. "No, there was no gold by the time we found the payroll wagon. Union scouts had already taken it." Zara studied his face, finding only truth in his weary eyes. "I believe you." Something softened in his expression. "Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "You saved my life yesterday." "You saved mine first," she reminded him with a small smile. "I suppose that makes us even." But they both knew something had fundamentally changed between them. The ranch hands returned late that day, alarmed by the signs of violence. Owen explained briefly, omitting certain details that Zara understood were best kept private. That night, watch was set. Though no one truly believed Jeb would return so soon, in the quiet hours before dawn, Zara found herself unable to sleep. She slipped downstairs for a cup of tea, surprised to find Owen at the kitchen table, a half-empty bottle of whiskey before him. "I thought you didn't drink," she said softly. He looked up, his eyes haunted. "Only on anniversaries and after gunfights." Zara sat across from him. "Do you want to talk about it? Which part? The war, the dead men in my pasture, my failures? Any of it? All of it?" Owen studied her face for a long moment, then pushed the whiskey aside. "I was 19 when I joined the Confederate Army. Not because I believed in the cause, I didn't own slaves and never would, but because Texas was my home." He traced a pattern on the worn table. "I saw things, did things, that haunt me still." "War changes people," Zara said gently. "It strips away pretense," Owen agreed. "Shows you who you really are," his expression darkened. "I didn't like what I saw in myself. Yet you stood against evil men then and now, too late, too little." He rubbed his face tiredly. "After the war, I came home to nothing. My father had died, the farm was in ruins. I worked cattle drives for years, saving every penny, finally bought this place. And married," Zara prompted softly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Sarah, she was the daughter of a dry goods merchant in Amarillo, kind, patient. She saw good in me when I couldn't see it myself." "She sounds wonderful." "She was." Owen's voice roughened. "When she died, I thought I'd never feel anything again except grief. Didn't want to." Their eyes met across the table. Something electric passed between them, a current of understanding and possibility. "And now," Zara whispered. Owen reached across the table, his calloused fingers brushing hers. Now I'm afraid of feeling too much." The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and momentous. Zara turned her hand, entwining her fingers with his. "Me too." Winter descended on the ranch with merciless force. Snow blanketed the plains, transforming the landscape into a vast white ocean. Inside the ranch house, life continued. Zara's responsibilities expanded as the cold confined them indoors more often. She began teaching young Charlie to read in the evenings by the fire. The Donovan brothers carved wooden figurines to pass the time. Hank's stories of the early days grew taller with each telling, and Owen began to smile more. They developed a routine. After the evening meal, when the hands retired to the bunkhouse, Owen would help Zara with the dishes. Their conversations flowed more freely then, away from other ears. They spoke of books they'd read, places they'd seen, dreams they'd once had. Sometimes their hands would touch briefly, sending warmth spreading through Zara that had nothing to do with the kitchen stove. As Christmas approached, a festive spirit pervaded the ranch despite the isolation. Zara decorated with pine boughs and red ribbon. The men contributed their own touches. Miguel crafted a beautiful nativity scene from clay, while Hank surprised everyone by producing a fiddle and filling the house with music. On Christmas Eve, after a feast of roast venison and all the trimmings, Owen asked Zara to join him on the porch. The night was clear, stars blazing overhead in the vast Texas sky. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. Zara unwrapped it carefully to find a leather-bound journal, its cover tooled with delicate wildflowers. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "I noticed you writing sometimes on scraps of paper," Owen explained, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Thought you might like something proper to write in." "I've been trying to record memories of my parents," she admitted, "before they fade." Owen nodded in understanding. "Memory's a precious thing." Zara reached into her pocket and withdrew her own gift, a knitted scarf in deep blue wool. "It's not much," she said, suddenly shy. "It's perfect." Owen wrapped it around his neck immediately. "No one's made me something by hand since." "Since Sarah," she finished for him. He nodded, his eyes reflecting starlight. The moment was shattered by the sound of approaching horses, many horses. Owen stiffened, hand moving to his gun. "Get inside," he ordered. "Wake the men." Jeb Harker had returned, and he hadn't come alone. 8 riders materialized from the darkness surrounding the house. "Shaw," Jeb's voice carried on the cold air. "Come out and face me." The ranch hands armed themselves quickly, taking positions at windows and doors. Owen stood on the porch, seemingly unafraid. "This ends tonight, Jeb," he called. "There's no gold, never was." "Then you'll die for nothing," Jeb replied. "Send out the woman and your men, my quarrels with you alone." "Not happening," Owen's voice was steel. Zara moved to his side, ignoring his attempt to push her back. "Mr. Harker," she called, "it's Christmas Eve. Surely even you observe some decency on this night." A murmur ran through Jeb's men. She could sense their discomfort, their reluctance to attack a ranch on Christmas Eve. "The lady's right, Jeb," one of them said. "This ain't right." Jeb's face contorted with rage. "Cowards, all of you." He raised his pistol, aiming at Owen, but before he could fire, a shot rang out from the darkness beyond. Jeb toppled from his saddle, dead before he hit the ground. Into the shocked silence rode the sheriff and 6 deputies, rifles ready. "Anyone else want to die tonight?" the sheriff asked conversationally. Jeb's men surrendered without further resistance. Later, as the sheriff's posse departed with their prisoners, Owen explained how he'd sent Hank to town for the law the day after the first attack, anticipating Jeb's return. "You knew he'd come back at Christmas?" Zara asked, shivering in the aftermath of danger. "I knew he'd come when he thought we'd be most vulnerable," Owen corrected, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Jeb always did have a flair for the dramatic. Despite the interruption, the ranch celebrated Christmas with renewed spirit, grateful for their safety. As the new year dawned, bringing with it lengthening days and the promise of spring, Zara found herself facing a decision. She had been at the Shaw Ranch for nearly 8 months. Her wages, carefully saved, would allow her to travel east to her cousins as originally planned. Yet the thought of leaving filled her with a profound sadness she couldn't ignore. One bright February morning, Owen found her by the creek, watching the ice break up in the strengthening sun. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, sitting beside her on a fallen log. "I was thinking about choices," she replied honestly. "About paths taken and not taken." Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. "You're thinking of leaving?" It wasn't a question, but Zara answered anyway. "I'm thinking about staying." Hope flickered across his face before he carefully schooled his expression. "Your position here is secure for as long as you want it. And if I want more than a position, Owen," the use of his given name, something she rarely did, caught his attention. He turned to face her fully, searching her eyes. "What exactly are you saying, Zara?" She gathered her courage. "I'm saying that I came here with nothing but the clothes on my back and my mother's broken teacups. I thought my story was ending." Her voice softened. "But you were right that day at the auction. My story was just beginning with you." Owen's breath caught visibly. "Zara, I love you," she said simply. "I don't expect anything in return. I just couldn't leave without telling you." For a long moment, Owen was silent, his face unreadable. Then, with infinite gentleness, he took her hands in his. "When Sarah died," he said quietly, "I buried my heart with her, or thought I did. I never imagined feeling this way again, never wanted to." His voice roughened. "Then you came into my life with your courage and your kindness, and somehow, without my noticing, you brought my heart back to life." Tears blurred Zara's vision. "Owen, I love you, Zara Jones," he said, his voice sure and strong. "Stay with me, not as my housekeeper, as my wife." Joy, pure and powerful, surged through her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a promise of beginnings rather than endings. When they parted, Owen rested his forehead against hers, his smile more brilliant than the Texas sun. "I don't have a ring," he apologized. "I don't need one," she assured him, but he shook his head. "You deserve everything, Zara. The proper proposal, a ring, a wedding." She silenced him with another kiss. "All I need is you." They were married in April, when wildflowers carpeted the plains in blue and gold. The ceremony was small but joyful, attended by the ranch hands who had become family and a few friends from town. Zara wore a simple white dress with forget-me-nots in her hair. Owen, clean-shaven and solemn in his best suit, looked at her as if she were a miracle. "I never thought I'd have this again," he confessed that night, holding her close in what was now their shared bedroom. "A chance at happiness, at love." "Life has a way of surprising us," Zara replied, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "Sometimes the end is really a beginning." "And sometimes," Owen said, kissing her with newfound confidence, "an auction really is just the start of the story." 2 years later, Zara stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching Owen teaching their infant daughter to wave at the setting sun. Little Sarah, named for the woman whose memory they both honored, gurgled happily in her father's strong arms. The Shaw Ranch had prospered. New hands had been hired, the cattle herd had expanded, and the house had grown by 2 rooms. Zara's kitchen garden now supplied vegetables year-round, and her preserves won ribbons at the county fair. But the greatest treasure was the love that had blossomed from the ashes of auction day, despair, a love that had survived gunfights and winter storms, nightmares and healing, grief and joy. As if sensing her thoughts, Owen looked up, his smile warm with contentment. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Shaw?" Zara descended the porch steps to join her family, her heart full to bursting. "I was thinking that some endings are really beautiful beginnings." Owen's arm encircled her waist as they gazed west toward the horizon, where the Texas sun painted the sky in brilliant golds and crimsons. "Best auction I ever attended," he murmured against her hair. Zara laughed, the sound carrying across the land they both loved. "Best story I ever lived." Together, they watched the sun slip below the horizon, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring another dawn, another day in their continuing story, the one that had begun with a gavel's fall and an auction's end, when a cowboy had offered not just a job, but a future filled with love.